Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Matt Watson. Hi, Matt.
What's going on, man?
Oh, I've got so much data, and I don't know what to do with it, man. I had to bring an expert in today.
What kind of data you got over there?
I mean, dude, it's just
Talking about your Fitbit or something?
I don't
'Cause
even
you
know
have one of
I don't
those.
even know where to start. I just literally have so much. It's running my life.
One Excel spreadsheet is not a lot of data.
Stockpiled ever. I tried to get a hold of fullscale.io to help me find some development help quickly and affordably. And they actually do, or we do, employ data scientists and some other people that do a lot of cool stuff. And you know, I joke about the data, but I'm also not joking because I do have a lot of it for a lot of different things. I think the subject of data science is intriguing. So with us today, we've got Stephen Hardy, who's the CEO of mySidewalk. What's up?
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I feel like I should call you doctor or something if we're going to be all data
Dr.
science.
Watson's fine.
He set you up for that one.
Matt's been set.
Or Dr. Matt.
If it wasn't for Matt, this podcast would suck.
That's right.
That's how we like. That's the beauty of having two Matts on here. So, Stephen, at mySidewalk, you guys do a lot of interesting stuff. You've self-defined as GovTech, but you know, I want to talk about some of that. But really, when it comes to using data science, it's obviously, quote, data is a hot topic. Not only like how it's gathered, how it's used, what it's used for, and then how much of it there actually is.
Yeah.
Some people consider data to now be the most valuable thing on the planet.
Yep.
So, you know, when it comes to, why don't we start by talking about your business, mySidewalk, and those of you that listen often know that we like it when you're interactive. So go to mysidewalk.com, little reference, and check out what's up. And if you want to see how beautiful we are, you can also tune into the Startup Hustle YouTube channel or find us on the ground.
Beautiful.
Keep rolling with that, brother. Yeah, that's data. Bad data.
Not a bad voice, though.
Yeah. Matt has the voice of an angel.
Yes, Matt does.
Yeah. All right. So, Stephen, what's up with mySidewalk? What are you guys doing there?
Yeah. So I think most fundamentally, you're talking about data, and as a business, we just really believe that data should be a force for good. And so when we're thinking about that for us, it means how do we build a data science platform for public service? And so, kind of pulling one layer back more into that, when we were kind of looking around at the platforms that are out there to solve really complicated kind of community scale issues, there are plenty of business intelligence tools, and they're great at profit maximization. There aren't really good city or community intelligence tools. And so that's really what our platform at its core is meant to do, is to help you solve complicated interdisciplinary data problems around people and place.
Okay. So I'm going to force some simplicity here.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What's
Like
an example?
Yeah, like one basic example of like you, and I love the idea, the concept of using data for good, because I think a lot of people do have kind of a jaded view of what data is being, you're watching me.
Yep. So I'd say the simplest example is, how do you help a fire department get to your house faster, right? And in a world where every year there are more and more emergency response calls, and there are shifting demographics beneath those and changing traffic patterns, how do we ensure that as a fire department, we're making sure that we get to a house as soon as possible after every call? So that's a very simple problem that a lot of our customers are trying to solve.
So what would you look at? Like, what are the factors that control that?
Yeah, and you try to be upstream into the prevention side of things, and then you're obviously in response too after there's a call that comes in. So you're looking at the call data. You're looking at the fire departments. They collect CAD, computer-aided dispatch, and RMS data, and that describes how long each bit of the getting out of the station into your house takes, right? But there's also, I'm in the weeds on this one. The most important thing is they have a lot of flat file data that they've been collecting for quite a while. Not a firefighter got into the business to be a data analyst, and so they've got all of this data. They've got historic data. They're having to figure out how's the community changing year over year, month over month, and they know they're sitting on performance data. They just don't know how to unlock it.
Sure.
So for us, it's just like, okay, how do we take all that flat data, augment it with a bunch of community data, and give you something that you can use to improve your performance?
Well, and I would guess some of that is just mapping out each fire station and who lives around it and how long it takes to drive to all those points.
All the drive time's a big part of it, but the
some
shifting demographics are a big part of it too.
Would
right?
some of it too even be like how many people are at the station, how fast you answer the call?
Yeah,
like
and they share dispatches.
What kind of things you might be doing when the call comes in, or
and the only thing that a fire station can change is how fast they can get from when they get the call to out the door.
Yeah,
sure. They don't want to drive too fast. That's not a good solution, right? But so there's a dispatch part of it, and then there's a how fast do we get out the door?
You can't drift a fire truck.
you probably could. You would have to. There would be an emergency. There would be an emergency response right on the backside.
I like where you're going. I really, really like where you're going with this, Watson. Are we going to have Fast and Furious Part 12?
Yes.
Fire truck. Yes. The fire truck
you
drift.
You can definitely see underneath the fire truck. Even there'd be the possibility.
By the way, there was a funny story with drifting. So I used to have a Shelby Cobra, and I took it to Jiffy Lube once to just get. And the guy there was like, I got like a 10-minute inquisition. He's like, so, I mean, do you do any drifting or like you do any street racing? I was like, no, man. Like I'm like a middle-aged white dude from the suburbs. I'm really not into racing for pink slips or drifting. He's like, well, if you ever really want to do it. So
I used to get those questions all the time when I owned a Ferrari.
Yeah.
They'd ask me, how fast do you drive? And I'm like, 80?
Yeah. Yeah. I drove your Ferrari faster than 80 once.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
weird
questions
people get.
Well, but that, by the way, and that's actual data though. You look at some of that stuff, like, I mean, these, I think it's interesting. I think the fire truck example is interesting because when something's on fire or there's a medical emergency, like a minute can be a massive difference. I mean, that can be the difference between life and death.
Yeah. Every 30 seconds, a fire doubles in size.
Oh,
so
wow.
It is really like every second matters in that world.
Sounds a lot like our listening audience, right? Doubling in size every 30 seconds. But okay, so now in regards to we like to catch the backstory of the experts that come to talk to us about these different subjects. I mean, how did you get into data science? Like, how did you there's a lot of like levels of, I've been trying to teach myself a little bit just to try to understand how to use it for good and not evil ourselves. But I've realized there's a lot of layers to what you could call yourself when it comes to being a data scientist.
For sure. So May 4th, 2007, there was an EF5 tornado that destroyed the town of Greensburg, Kansas, completely leveled it overnight. Largest tornado in the history of the recorded world. And out of my background's in city planning. So after the storm, then Governor Sebelius came to our office and asked us to help with the rebuilding. And so I did that. And I, for a year, was just like driving down to Greensburg every week, spending all my time down there, trying to help them think about how they would rebuild.
And that's why you were at mySidewalk?
Yeah. So I had my own city planning practice, and then after right after that, jumped over to then MindMixer, now mySidewalk. But the punchline of the story is, man, the city planning tools that are out there are awful. I mean, they are antiquated. There's nothing. Everybody's making gut-based decisions instead of actually having good data to help inform how you're going to make really monumental generational decisions.
And city planning is super important. As DeCourcy and I have both spent a lot of time in like Cebu City in the Philippines. Yep. That's a city that's 500 years old that has literally never had any city planning.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
and
you can tell
a cluster disaster from like roads, infrastructure, everything about it is just atrocious.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that in the background of wherever you live that is going on that is like vitally important that I think most people never even consider.
Yeah.
Like who's planning this kind of stuff? And now everyone complains about it after it's not done right.
Right.
So when Matt talks about Cebu, and it's funny because, like some of the things really pop out. Like there'll be a like what we would call a pole, like just a wood pole, and it'll be sitting on the corner, and there'll be like 1,500 wires coming out of it. And you're like, oh my God. I can't help but think like there's a lot of typhoons that come through here, and one of those poles have to fall over occasionally, and then who's the one that gets to reconnect the wires? And how do you?
They just run a new one. I think that's what we see.
Is it?
There's so many wires. Yeah, that's because they just run a new one.
So, but those kind of things. And then you also talk about the street planning. So growing up, a kid that lived on my street, his dad was a city planning engineer. And I remember him talking about like stoplights.
Yep.
I would imagine that's something that you guys can probably examine, like simple things. Like if they're not timed right, you'll hit every red or do just goofy things.
Well, and that's obviously you multiply that by every commuter, and then you start having problems. And the cities, man, of course I could talk about them all day long. I think one of the things that I love that I think is completely relevant to every startup founder out there is that essentially every city is like its own little business.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, there's an opportunity for each of them to be experimenting, for each of them to be taking risks, for each of them to be sharing best practices. And nobody's really thinking about the cities in that way as nimble, able to respond quickly, having a lot to teach each other. And so there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit there.
Yeah. And some of these things too. So we were talking about actually talking about the coronavirus in Seoul, South Korea, but I'm supposed to travel through there soon. So I've learned a lot about Seoul, but one of the things I learned is their airport is 3 times more efficient than like the average airport in the world. And a lot of that is data analysis. And like, I actually found people like talking about that online. They're like figuring out like, how can we get people in? How can we get them out faster? All the way down to like, distributing planes on the runway and stuff like that. Now, I mean, literally they're 3 times faster. And
amazing.
It is amazing considering that that's a mega city and, you have planes going in and out. I mean, and that is just real basic zeros and ones kind of stuff.
Yeah. With pretty predictable patterns, unless there's something like coronavirus. And then all of a sudden, when you've built a system for maximum efficiency, you're really taxing it, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. So with this are I think some of the things that are interesting. I usually click on articles in the Wall Street Journal that are related to machine learning and AI because they're fascinating. And I read an article yesterday that the IRS is using AI to find people that are cheating on their taxes.
Of course they should.
Yeah.
But why don't they?
Well, right. Yeah. But I thought that was pretty interesting because you mentioned city planning and certain government things. Let's be honest. They're not really they're not usually the crown jewel example for progress and innovation on many days. They're usually kind of drug behind the cart.
Yep.
And then catch up. So with your platform, is that kind of a turnkey kind of thing? Or do you do I plug in? All right. So here at Matt and Matt, City USA, and we're wanting to do stuff. Do we use your mySidewalk as the structure, or do you have to have a pretty heavy hand in helping us with it?
No, you're using our platform. I mean, we have more data scientists on staff than probably the western half of the United States. I mean, it is just not common for cities that work for city governments. That is, it's not common for cities to have anybody that has that kind of training.
Yeah, sure.
And if they do, it's just 1 or 2 people.
I would imagine that the cities also would have a hard time competing with the modern market of compensation.
That and the data is unwieldy, and it takes more than they've got. And of course, they don't have high turnover rates on staff either. So people have been there a long time and they're used to using old tools and doing it a different way.
So do people primarily use your tools for city planning?
Those are definitely a big part of the decision. I'd say it's kind of twofold. It's like, 1, how do we improve our performance and get better? And 2, and this is like fundamentally a national issue, how do we prove that what we're doing works? So a big part of what what we build is actually communication tools about data.
So can we prove like how we fix potholes faster?
Yeah, that would be a really good one. Actually, that's a really good one for us. It's like, okay, there's a compelling story, right? There's data, there's a compelling story, there's a resource allocation part. That is bread and butter stuff that we're working.
Well, I think part of what your point is, though, is as well is you have to prove to a lot of people the why,
the value,
like, and so the thing is because you're like, hey, we've got to spend money doing this, but people in government, sometimes are very illogical, and then sometimes are overly logical, and they want to know, okay, so we're going to spend $100,000 on this. If you can make it tangible, say, but we're going to save $400,000 on whatever, then all of a sudden it makes sense. But you got to show like what are the line items? Dealing with the government's excruciating.
Yeah.
By the way, so I apologize. Or I feel for you.
No. Actually, I'm such a nerd. I love it. Right. That's the whole idea of government is that we do together what we can't do alone. I think that's a really powerful concept. So while there are warts everywhere, it's something I think that's worth the effort.
So do you guys provide just tools and a platform for them, or do you provide a lot of professional services?
We're doing our best to put as much of that into the platform. So like in the fire department example, it's really just, hey, give us your CAD data. We already have best practice already figured out. So we know exactly how to look at all of it. It's what you see is what you get. You give it to us. We're giving you a fully baked platform and response, and it's ready to roll. So
you got pre-built algorithms for common things.
All of our, it's like we have a team of subject matter experts, and instead of consulting, we're saying, okay, how do we use our very flexible platform to pre-inject that expertise into the software?
So do you have competitors that do this too?
It's like in a particular department or vertical, there are more like niche players that are just in that spot.
Just in the fire
department.
Yeah,
exactly. And so, a perfect example is, that there's an opioid overdose crisis across the country. Well, fire departments and public health departments have a specific interest in have a specific interest in sharing that data, and they're not doing that right now. Okay. So that's a really good place for us to really
stop talking and get your picture taken.
Sorry.
So to that point, do you guys also get data from the federal government that goes into this stuff too?
Yes, we do. We're pulling from every source that we can find it from.
But at some point, like these sort of regulations and sort of current events and movements have to really help you, right? If all the states are really focused on opioid and you guys are like, hey, we're here, we can help.
Yep.
That like drives business to you, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to be as proactive as we can about seeing what's coming down the pipe.
So there, in regards to data science, and I'm not claiming to have any level of expertise past like a hobbyist, but one of the things and the different things that I've read or researched is it's very specific about your actual data, because not all of it's useful.
No.
And it seems to be the hardest. So if I'm going to, when it comes to using data science, what are a couple tips that you can give me that are related to like what's useful and what might not be? And I know that's a really general question.
Yeah, and it's not. Honestly, the classic mistake by most of our customers is trying to measure everything.
That's the point.
Yeah. Like, instead of starting with, okay, there's this Venn diagram of really useful stuff and stuff that's easy to get, and like you should be starting in the middle of that. So that's what we're trying to help our customers identify is like, okay, yeah, that's good aspirational content, but like you already have this, it's already easy to get. We already know it's high value. Let's just get you a couple of wins with that data and grow from there. So I just say start with like what's a fundamental problem you're trying to solve that you think you have the data for is the right place to start.
And then the next part of that became very apparent was, well, and I, like I said, I entered this, like this is literally me listening to an Audible book about what is AI and what is data science. Because honestly, I wanted to start, there's a lot of really cool practical applications that come out of this stuff the fascination actually started, I went to TechCrunch. And every 80% of the people that we talked to, these words came out of their mouth. Our machine learning algorithm,
right?
But so much of it can be very simple. And some of the things that, all right, so we'll use Gigabook as an example. As you use it, it actually That's our booking platform. You schedule to come in here using it. And so as you schedule X number of services, it will make that first in your dropdown. And technically, that's like the most basic kind of a ranking algorithm. But it makes things not annoying. Mm-hmm. So now when it comes to data, though, you get a lot of it. Some of it's structured and some isn't. And that was the thing that I found really fascinating. So like the phone carriers were the example. Like, dude, there is literally like terabytes of information coming through cell phone carriers, and it's coming in a fairly unstructured way. Mm-hmm. So how do you help or deal with people when it comes to like, okay, I've got all this data. How do I make sense of any of it?
Yeah. So there are two buckets of data for us. One is the data sets that we can get at a really large national layer kind of availability. And for that, it's okay, we're trying to make it as smooth as possible. We're trying to harmonize it across time. Those are the data sets that we can actually provide for things like machine learning, and you can see a lot of outside applications for that. The other bucket is our customer uploaded data, and it's as ugly and beastly as you would.
I can imagine you guys have like the best and worst case scenario of data. Like you have an amazing amount of data, but it's in every format. People want to send it to you in every dumb way. They don't send it on time. The files are corrupted. Like it's a nonstop.
That's the problem with it, though, because it doesn't have any structure around it. So, and people look at things like machine learning or AI, and they're like, "Isn't the machine supposed to?" Yeah, no, it's not going to like figure out why you're an idiot. Yep. At least not yet.
Somebody adds a comma to a file, and the whole damn thing breaks.
By the way, there's no reason I'm looking at you when I'm saying that.
I didn't do it.
Well, just think street or ST, or there are 5 different ways just to abbreviate
address parsing is the worst.
Yeah.
But by the way, we actually there's you talk about data being so important. And how that can have an impact. So, and I don't think he'll mind us mentioning, we work with a company in Australia at Full Scale that handles some data, and their why use us is it's address verification. Right. That you saying that, but the thing is if you're going to send 20% of anything out and it comes back, like look at the waste. Yeah. I mean, and then that trickles down because it's other waste. Like you theoretically paid someone to transport that with a vehicle using fossil fuels and cut down a tree and everything. And it's like a weird little cycle of bullshit that, structuring the data correctly can fix.
Addresses internationally are very different in the United States.
Well, that's the part too.
We are so fortunate in the United States to have like a pretty simple addressing. But like in the Philippines, oh my God. It's
way
like,
different. Yeah.
My fiance's parents, their address is Acacia Street. Who the hell knows where?
By the way, and it's funny.
No house number.
So
nothing.
you mentioned that this is going to sound weird, but when our employees, when they onboard as a new employee, we get their address, and we actually like part of the documentation is actually draw a very simple map
of where it is.
Yeah, because you talk about city planning. All right,
the addresses don't have numbers or anything.
Dude, there is no city planning there. So
that is great.
I'm 90% of our listeners are not in Kansas City, so this isn't going to make sense. But imagine whatever 2 lanes each direction road you have that goes from where you live to downtown, and now your entire city population is just driving on that every morning and afternoon. That's how some of these cities are. And there's no predictability. And by the way, you talk about stoplights. Yeah, right. If they're even there,
nobody pays much attention.
Maybe paying attention. I think it's about how loud you honk and how forceful you are at wedging your vehicle in amongst the others.
How determined you look.
I have decided to now in the United States when I drive, I just pull out in front of people and expect them to stop.
Yeah,
it's not a good practice, bro.
It's not, because that's the way they do it in the Philippines.
It's not.
If you can pull out in front of traffic and you're blocking, you have to stop.
Okay, so the determination of data. Now, all right, I think when it comes to using data science, if you want to use it in a way that makes sense for your business, you have to start with a basic fundamental thought of how can I sell more or spend less?
Yep.
And then I think that's the basic business application. And then I think past that and still in Congress with those two things, because they're subcategories of selling more, spending less, is how can we use this data to increase or improve a quote customer experience? Like I mentioned with Gigabook, like, okay, I think people don't think this out. And startup founders, please listen to what I'm going to say, because I think it is important. Rule one for me when it comes to developing anything is this annoying? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is not no, mm-hmm. then we got to go back and fix something. Mm-hmm. And you look at something like all right, so if you have a scheduling platform and you have 5 services and the one that's the most popular starts with S, and it's every time you add that, you have to click and pick it from the dropdown, click and pick, that eventually gets annoying. Mm-hmm. And these little tiny things contribute to a customer experience. Like, Matt, how many data points does Stackify monitor or deal with every day? It's billions, right?
Billions a day.
Yeah. So it's like, what the fuck do we do with all of this and how do we make it useful? So
we pray.
Yes.
Pray. We pray on the data. Yes. And then we get all the answers.
Oh my God, that's probably the least scientific approach that we could have come up with. But the point is when you're figuring out how to use data science. Yeah. Oh man, there's stuff you can sprinkle on the data too.
Yes.
That makes it magic. But the point is the same way you're solving problems for cities, data can solve problems for businesses. We've had Matt Moody in from Bellwether, yep. and they used that same data to help businesses retain clients or subscribers.
Find unhappy customers.
And by the way, though, look at the trickle-down effect, though. Like, key the word unhappy.
Yes.
Like, you're improving your user and client experience. And so that's selling more or spending less. And anything you can use your data for to try to keep people in and around what you're doing is way more affordable than trying to find new clients.
Yep. Completely agree. But abstract it even one level up and start thinking about, for what's a customer experience for a city? Because it is a thing, right? Your citizen experience, customer experience is absolutely a contributor to how successful you're going to be. And this is, if I'm prognosticating, I'm convinced that there are going to be real winners and losers as it relates to cities over the next 25, 30 years.
I agree.
And it's not going to be nice to be in a losing city.
I think that's already very much a now thing. And not even 20 years.
You can see it. I mean, it's easier to delete an app off your phone than it is to move your residence. But it's not impossible to do. And if anything, I think that the aging infrastructure, the changes that we're having to deal with, climate change issues, those are really going to tax government. And so the ones that are able to look at the data and to make good decisions are going to be the ones that are the winners. And that's really where you're going to want to be living through time.
An interesting example, and these things are tough to measure, but if you have an entire city, so in Kansas City, we have couple million people here
in the region. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just say that half of those people go somewhere every day. And the traffic, because we didn't plan well, and if you're going to widen the highway lanes, that's like a years on end project. These minutes and 1 and 2 minutes and 5 minutes and whatever, when you take them across millions of people, they become remarkably significant when the amount of time, because being stuck in your car is about as low value of an activity as you can engage in. So the human capital thing is a real thing, not to mention just the general mood.
Sucks.
When you're stuck in traffic, are you usually your best self?
I'm not very happy.
That's why that's why road rage has its own definition.
You can listen to the Startup Hustle podcast.
Correct.
While you're stuck in traffic.
It's interesting. I talked to a lot of people about this podcast and them starting one, and they ask about these are intentionally the length that they are.
I was going to say it about fits, right?
Well, it fits a to and from.
Yeah.
So the average commute is to and from work is about 40, 45 minutes. And that's just a national thing. Some people have less, some people have more. But there's some intent around that. And that was me actually looking at data before we started. Now, sometimes we go a little longer than that, because if we're talking about fun and interesting stuff, why not? But yeah. And by the way, you talk about looking at data. We do get our peak listening is in the standard hours of
Drive time.
and now it's across multiple time zones, so it kind of spreads out. But we get a little graph of who's listening. You're talking about thousands of people a day, and thank you for being one of those people. We really do appreciate that. But there's also intent with that data. Like, this comes out at 5 a.m. Central, Monday through Thursday. And I'm really bitchy if it doesn't for some reason, because I want it to be out.
Predictable.
And, that's 6 a.m. East Coast, and it's a little later, but, that's the time it is. So, and that's, we have had a lot, like, let's call out Stuttgart, Germany again. Joseph, what's up, dude? Oh, by the way, we have a thank you. So Dawn Gabel was commenting on LinkedIn about how much she enjoys the podcast, and thanks for the hard work. Thanks for noticing. We appreciate that. But our buddy in Germany who reached out and said, "Man, I love this. It keeps me entertained during my commute." And I think he mentioned he's like riding a train or something.
Probably.
But you just talk about. If I don't know, we might have to come out with more episodes if mySidewalk can't fix the traffic problem nationwide. We're going to have to lengthen it. Don't make me have to lengthen this, Steve.
No. That's we're working on the opposite of that.
So once again, we're here with Stephen Hardy, the CEO of mySidewalk. You can go to mysidewalk.com. If you want to find or stalk Stephen on social media, he's at Stephen R. Hardy.
Got it.
You provided that data, so it became open source. Now, okay. I think one thing where the data doesn't lie is Mixtape the Game.
Oh God.
Now, unlike the time when I beat Watson 18 straight times at Rochambeau. By the way, I'd like to see the data behind that. I learned about where Rochambeau came. That was actually a French general I watched a George Washington 3-part series, and they were like, they kept saying Rochambeau. I was like, oh, that's where that came from.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. So I've pulled a card from the Mixtape deck. If you want to check out mixtapethegame.com, or if you want to join us and potentially play on the app, iOS, Android, if you're a Spotify premium member, you are in good shape. All right, I'm going to read a scenario.
Okay.
We're all going to mention a song comes to mind, and then we will vote. You may not vote for yourself or Watson.
Okay. All right.
Is that voter tampering?
I think so. That's voter suppression right there.
What song would you have played defending the Alamo? I'm going with... I really just want to say Tequila, the Tequila song. And it's because I think of Pee Wee Herman doing that Tequila dance while and trying to get his bike out of the basement of the Alamo. So I'm going with Tequila.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's going to be tough to beat. The one that popped to mind, and this is such an antiquated reference, but the was it 1812 Overture, which is the one with the cannons. It seems like something that you need cannons for, right?
I'm always down for anything with cannons.
No. You got it.
Yeah, that's not bad. I think that's the 1812 Overture. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
I think that's right.
So I've been doing a lot of wedding planning and picking music for my wedding. And I guess
congratulations.
I guess I'm going to pick one of those songs because they're all top of mind. So I'm going to go with "Who Let the Dogs Out" by Bahamut.
Wow.
Is that the processional?
So many choices as a voter here. I've got "Who Let the Dogs Out" or the 1812 Overture. Wow. What will I vote for?
Or we can go with the Captain Underpants version, the 1812 O'Farture.
Oh.
I like that
Are
better.
you familiar with that one?
Oh, well, I'm definitely familiar with Captain Underpants.
I am too.
I can imagine.
O'Farture.
I am too. Funny story. My son ran down. He's 3. He ran downstairs fully naked the other day with a t-shirt tied around his head, and he said, "I'm Captain Underpants." I was like, "Dude, you need to have on underpants." Then. All right, let's vote, and then we'll get back to the data. So what's your answer?
Who Let the Dogs Out?
Okay, I'm voting for Steven.
I go Tequila. You're the tiebreaker.
I'm gonna go with Tequila.
Yeah, it's a
solid.
You need something a little more uplifting.
Yeah.
You know what I want to do, and I sometimes defer the money gun, but we have these cameras that stream the at Startup Hustle podcast YouTube channel, and I'm going to fire this right into it.
Oh my gosh!
Gonna blast the audience with money, huh?
Yep, there you go. That's what it looks like to be looking down the barrel of a money gun.
Check us out on YouTube.
You got it, baby. You got it. Man, we need to get. I feel like we need more money in the money gun because I want it to shoot. We should get some data around.
There is
that.
a $1-2 bill I see.
Everyone points
That's
that out. Yeah,
We're big spenders.
It's the outlier.
Big spenders.
Yeah.
You found the anomaly.
I
Yeah.
did.
Good job with the data science.
If you catch that while it's being fired, like specifically like Mr. Miyagi grabbed the $2 bill.
You get to keep it.
You had $1 on your shoulder.
Did I?
That was awesome. Yeah.
I just like moved my arm and $1 fell on me.
Wanted
Yeah,
see
then
how
you
long
get to
it was
keep
gonna
the
stay
two.
there.
Okay, so anyway, back to what we're supposed to be doing here, being serious, talking about using data science.
So we got to use the data science.
Another thing I've learned with data science is there's platforms like yours that are plug and play, and then there's a whole segment of programmers that really trend towards data science. And I found it to be interesting. If you're building your own quote stuff, you're likely going to be using a Python programmer, an R programmer, or a Java programmer. Mm-hmm. Those seem to be the three that trend there. Do you guys?
Yeah, we're mostly Python.
Okay. Let's talk about why that works though. Like why is that?
God, I'm not the right guy for that.
I mean, am I going to be the one that's going to answer this?
Snakes are really good at navigating data.
Wrong.
No?
That was a slightly worse answer than preying on the data, Matt. Wow. Do I get to be the do I get to be the programmer guy? Actually, Python is often associated with automating tasks, which data is easily automatable, and it's also somewhat lightweight. So
Python is a very easy language to learn.
That too.
It's very English-like.
But that isn't the main reason that a lot of the data science trends to that. It runs in a lightweight kind of way. So when you're looking at the server resources and stuff like that, it's cheaper apparently. But I mean, those are some of the things. And then R and it's funny, I'd never even heard of R as a programming language until I started kind of looking into the data science and machine learning stuff. And that's very specifically made for that. There are a lot of products and servers out there, AWS, Google, Microsoft, stuff like that are dialed in specifically for data and data science and machine learning now. So I think that's pretty cool. Overall, there's a lot of plug and play stuff. And I think some people get scared off by the data science. While it's super complex on some levels, in some ways it wasn't as I learned more about it. So if you want to get started into data science, I know we talked about what data or whatever, what would be a standard approach for a startup founder if they want to do any of this?
I mean, there are really good resources available online. It's one of the things that, most of our customers are just getting into data and data science. And so one of the things that we've done, we've built a whole curriculum around how to just get started. And for us, the ability to use things like Jupyter notebooks and share your formulas, to have them double checked, to have somebody be able to kind of scale what you've
Is Jupyter the
from.
AWS? Is that their product? No.
Okay. It's an open source. Yeah. So anyway, I'd say I don't have anything that's better than just looking at what's available online and digging in on
sometimes
that.
That's the easiest answer. That's what I was even looking at different stuff, and you can just Google whatever it is that you want to do and put the word machine learning in it. And I found lots of reference documents, a lot of shared material that are hey, here's a simple library in Java or Python to create a ranking algorithm.
All these things are changing very fast.
Yep.
Microsoft SQL Server has built-in support for different machine learning now, and R and stuff like that. But you go back a few years ago, R I think was one of the primary things to use. But now you have things like TensorFlow and all sorts of stuff. And I am not a data science guy. So
and by the way, here's the thing though, as someone that has hired and employs hundreds of developers at this point, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, trying to find a quote R programmer, it's not really when you walk into a convenience store, you expect them to have Gatorade and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and stuff like that. That is not, our programmers are not everywhere. They're really not. That's kind of a specialty item. Python's a lot more available, overall. And then so you talk about data, GitHub reports who's signing up to do what. You're more versed with that. But data science was the big spike. over the fourth quarter of last year because so many more people are moving into it. I think in the end, what I figured out is calling yourself a data scientist doesn't necessarily mean you're a data scientist, but we can all kind of be one. I found it. I mean, I didn't dedicate a ton of time, but I pulled some really useful stuff, both from like an Audible book and a couple of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think being a data scientist is like being a software developer. I mean, it's like you can solve potentially any kind of problem, but the types of problems you solve are dramatically different.
Yeah.
Like, as a software
always.
developer, like I can make a video game, or I could write a microcontroller that controls how we water a farm, or I can make a web application, or I could actually do data science. Like,
it does.
You can use your skill set to do so many different things.
And it definitely does require, I mean, here's the thing is you talk about machine learning and AI, like the programs still need to know what they're trying to do. They require, like, a human is you're training that, and that's where the data scientist as an analyst and someone that gives input is crucial. You said you've got a lot of them on your team, so you're aware of that.
Yeah, I think the place where we actually see most of this fall down isn't in the technical work. It's more in the how do you communicate what you're finding, and because you'll put 99% of your effort into finding an insight and 1% into thinking about how you design the communication around it, and it'll fail every time. Everybody's eyes glaze over. And so that, if anything, that's a place where we're really trying to focus in how you design and communicate about data science insights.
That's one of the things Matt Moody pointed out. He's like, we've done a really great job of identifying some of the factors, but then the companies realize pretty quickly, oh shit, we got to actually execute. We got to do something actionable with this. And that's where, like in your case, you can't control whether a city's going to effectively use the data.
Like actually fixing the potholes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, right. It's one thing to say, hey, they're coming up and we can even predict where they might be.
Yeah.
But actually deploying someone to do it or having the resources, and then some of it's just a time issue. Like if you talk about using machine learning to keep a subscriber, once that trigger goes off and you realize you've irritated someone, your clock's ticking, man.
Yeah.
Just like the fire department.
Yep.
And that's how we bring it all back to the beginning of the episode.
Right.
Well, Stephen, it's a fascinating subject. I'd like to have you back down the road to see if we can expand on this.
Yeah,
I think that it's something that everyone's going to be exposed to, whether it's because the IRS is going to find you for cheating on your taxes, or the airport's going to get you out faster, or Watson's going to have come to a miraculous conclusion about the data he found.
Just keep praying.
Yep. See you all next time.
Praying in pythons.
Yeah. Wait. I was about to sign on. Snakes and praying is weird. Yeah, let's not start like a snake, one of those snakes.
Talking snakes.
I don't want to start one of those snake churches, dude. Those are usually associated with things that aren't progressive. See you next time.